What's going on, Exile? Welcome to my Reave and Flurry Scion based around the Varunastra weapon. Most of my gear is very cheap except for the 6-link belly of the beast that I use. As you can see, I clear maps and the easy bosses, which is basically up to tier 15 with Reave, and then for the tougher bosses I switch out Reave for Flurry, which you can see on the screen right now. It's my second character for the Flashback League, and I gotta say I really enjoy playing it and can see it working as a possible starter for the upcoming Incursion League, even if we yet don't know all of the changes that they will implement for that league. But anyway, so now let's have a look at all the items that I use for this character. So the main item that I use for this build, and the item the entire build is basically built around, is the Varunastra Wallblade. The Varunastra Wallblade gives you bonus from all melee weapon types on the skill tree, so it's very easy to get a lot of damage and bonus from the tree. For a helmet I use a Starconia's head for the evasion, attack speed, crit chance and life. And then for body armor I went with Belly of the Beast for the life and the resistance. For gloves I went with Shaper's Touch gloves for the life and the accuracy. And lastly I went for a Might of the Meek unique jewel and placed it where you can see on the screen right now to give me the 50% increased bonus from the claw and dagger nodes within the proximity. For rares, these are the stats that you're looking for. Basically I went for life and resist on all of my items, and then tried to squeeze out as much damage as possible for my rings and amulet. For the offhand I made sure to use a scepter, which turns into nothing but a stat stick when I attack with either Reave or Flurry, and all of my attacks will be coming from my Varunastra weapon instead. For jewels I use mainly Abos jewels with life, physical damage to attacks, and then physical damage to any melee weapon type. And for flasks I use an Eternal Life Flask with immune to bleeding, and then a Diamond Flask with immune to freeze. Then I use Natsiri's Promise, a Wise Oak, and lastly is a Lion's Roar. And for the main gem setup I used Reave, and with Reave I used elemental damage with attacks, melee physical damage, concentrated effect, hypothermia, and then multi-strike. And then for the tougher bosses I switched out Reave for Flurry, as well as multi-strike for main. The main movement skill I use is Whirling Blades, and I use that with faster attacks and Fortify. You can possibly switch out Fortify for Blood Magic if that's something you prefer. And in my offhand I used Ancestral Protector, Summon Ice Golem, and Vaal Haste. And the first defensive setup that I used is Cast from Damage Taken level 1, Immortal Call level 3, Blood Rage level 7, and Increased Duration. And my second defensive setup is Cast from Damage Taken level 1, Blade Vortex level 8, Frost Bomb level 10, and then Blind Support. And then lastly the auras and curses that I used was Hatred, Herald of Ash, Enlighten level 3, and then Punishment, which I cast by myself. For skills, these are the progressions that I went with. Please feel free to pause the video and screenshot each of the progression trees if you need to. I went for the two major keystones, which are Acrobatics for the dodge chance and then Vaal Pact for the extra leech. I started leveling with a claw before I could use Varunastra, so that's why I picked up claw nodes first, so remember that if you want to level with a different weapon. Other than that I went for plenty of extra life, damage and jewel sockets. I made some major changes when I got my last Ascendancy option, as I picked up the extra points from the Duelist starting pod. And speaking of Ascendancy, these are all of the choices I went for with regards to that. My first Ascendancy choice was Raider for the extra damage and chance to gain a frenzy charge whenever you hit a rare or unique enemy. And then I went for Slayer for the Overleech and Calling Strike, and then lastly I went for Path of the Duelist so I can allocate my passives from the Duelist starting point. Since I'm an evasion based build I went for Solo Lunaris, which gives me damage reduction and movement speed for nearby enemies. You also get 10% chance to avoid projectiles and 5% chance to dodge attacks. And for minor guard I went with Soul of Gruthkul, which gives you additional damage reduction for each hit you've taken recently. But the main reason I picked this choice is for after you've captured Arabics, enemies that hit you have an 8% reduced attack speed. And for bandits, either kill them all or help Alira. For leveling, I definitely always recommend using a Tabula Rasa. I leveled with a claw until I could switch to the Varunastra at level 64 and didn't really use Reave until that point either. I'd rather level with Frostblades instead, by just making sure to keep Reave and Blade Fury equipped in other gear while doing so. I used 2 Gordrill daggers from level 5 and used those until level 34 when I switched over to Morsur claws, and I used those until level 64 when I could equip my Varunastra. And for other uniques I used while leveling are Loctonial Caress gloves, Wanderlust boots, Darkness and Throne belt, and the Career Reward amulet. I also used a Thief's Torment ring from level 30. The main pros for this build is that you can do all content in the game. It's not overly expensive and it's a good combination of both mapper and boss killer. And with additional investment you can make this build a lot stronger than what you can see in the video. The main cons for this build is that reflect mods are no go, and no leech maps can be very rough.